Firstly, thank you, Astrid, for giving me opportunity to interview you for my YouTube channel and podcast.
And thank you for inviting me. It's really wonderful to be here and to meet you.
I thought to tell about you and the work that you are doing to my audience.
Okay,
So, can you please introduce yourself?
absolutely. My name is Astrid. I'm originally from South Africa. I started writing novels when I was 12 and published my first one 3 years ago. And it's been quite a roller coaster, actually. It's been a lot of fun to finally get all the stories that I've had in my head for a very, very long time out into the world.
So, you have this fascination to write books from your childhood.
Yes. Yes, I do.
So, what is your inspiration behind it?
My very first story idea came to me while I was reading a nonfiction book called The Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock. And it was very advanced. I mean, I was 12 when I read it, and I read half of it, and it just kind of got these ideas going about, what if fantasy, which is a genre I really like reading, could be set in Africa? Because at that time there were none. Children of Blood and Bone only came out a few years ago, and now there are many more African fantasy books. But when I was little, there was nothing like that. And that kind of got this idea going of a young girl who's got magical powers, but that it's African magic. So in a sense, there's also an influence from Harry Potter there because she goes to a magical school. But then I've been influenced by the African ideas of magic and how magic works. And then there's this element that came from the Fingerprints of the Gods about Atlantis, and that she then goes in search of Atlantis.
So, what is the first book that you published?
The first book I published is The Sibling's Tale. It's two books. Aspiring Part 1 of The Sibling Tale is this one. And then Becoming Part 2 of The Sibling's Tale is this one. And they are a retelling of a lesser known Grimm fairy tale called Brother and Sister. The first book is written from the first character's perspective. And it's a lot like Ella Enchanted, which is quite a famous Cinderella retelling. But then this one is the different fairy tale. And the second book is actually the retelling of that other fairy tale.
So, what's the response that you got for the first one?
It was so amazing. I'd always believed that there was no point in publishing my books because no one was going to like my books, because I had this idea that, well, it's not like Harry Potter and it's not like Lord of the Rings, so there's not really going to be any interest in it. And then I realized that if I don't publish my books, I'm actually holding myself back and I'm doing myself a disservice. So I just went ahead and did the whole thing. I self-published. And then I self-published in the May of 2019. And, it kind of took off, but it was slow and there weren't many reviews coming in. But then there was someone who really loved my book and told all her friends. And it kind of started moving forward. And then I actually submitted Aspiring for an award. And Aspiring in November of 2019 not only won the Silver Award for Young Adult Fantasy in the International Literary Classics Awards, but also got the International Literary Classics Award Gold for fairy tales. And that was huge for me.
So, are you a full-time writer?
No, I'm not. I would love to be. I'm getting there, but it's a process. As I mentioned, I published my first book 3 years ago. And so, yes, there has been a lot that's happened since then, but it isn't quite in a situation for me to be full-time yet.
So what response you got for the second one?
The second book is very positive reviews. There was a lot of the readers really like the fact that the tone is very different. So the first book is in first person, and the second book is written in third person, and they actually really liked that touch. I think when I republish these, because I will do an anniversary edition when I reach 5 years as a published author, I will actually do an anniversary edition where they are published as a single volume. I was told that it would be better to have two books so for the marketing, but in terms of what the story needs, it actually needs to be a single book. And I will be going back and fixing that in the future.
So both are interconnected. So the story continues from the first one.
Yes, it's a single story. The way I put it was essentially the original fairy tale starts with the brother and the sister fleeing their home and needing to run away because their stepmother is an evil witch and she has been horrible to them. It's not very clear what she's done, but they run away and then she sends her magic after them and turns the brother into an animal. And that's kind of where the story starts. So now for me, the thought was, well, how? How does all of this happen? Why does this happen? And that's the answer I've given in Aspiring is the why do they have to leave their home? What's the stepmother's deal? And what's all of that about? And then Becoming essentially is the retelling of the fairy tale. So it starts with the brother and the sister leaving, and then what happens after, and it follows the plot of the original fairy tale very closely.
So how much time you took to write this?
The Siblings Tale I wrote over a summer. I took a gap year after high school, and I had a month where I was completely free. I had absolutely no obligations. And so I just sat down with a pen and a notepad and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. It also taught me that that was the last book I would write on paper by hand, because I got horrible writer's cramp in my hand. Since then, I've done everything on computer. It was also then I had the issue that I had this manuscript in a notebook that I then had to transcribe onto computer, and that took time to happen as well.
So what are the emotions that people are going to feel after reading this?
It's a very uplifting story. I realize in hindsight that this is a theme that has actually found its way into all of my writing. And the Siblings Tale has it. It's a little bit more subtle because I didn't know that I was doing this at the time, is the idea of transformation. It's that we all have the capacity to change our lives and to live our best lives. And it takes certain important steps in our own personal growth that will allow us to blossom as people and to achieve anything that we set our minds to. And that is very much the story of the Siblings Tale. It's Elizabeth, who's the main character, starts out with her mom passes away and she realizes that she has magic, but she has nobody who can teach her. She's trying to do the best she can, but she's still very young and she doesn't understand how the world works. And she has these ideas that come from the outside that, she doesn't think she's pretty. And she doesn't think that she can find love because of her social situation. She doesn't think that she's ever going to get married. And all of these aspects kind of grow over time into something where she sees that her differences are actually what make her lovable and beautiful and a worthy person. And then she grows even more and she grows into her magical powers and actually embraces who she is and then becomes the kind of person that is able to confront witches and save her country and do what she needs to do. And she was the only one who could do these things. So it's also that whole idea of, even if we feel that we don't fit in, that seed of not belonging is actually our springboard to become who we're meant to be and to do the things that we're meant to do.
So it's a fantasy story. It's not, you didn't inspire from the real characters.
I think all fantasy is always inspired by something in reality. I think Elizabeth is an interesting character because I took all of my personal flaws and worked them into her character. And then as she grew and changed and grew up, I then turned her into the person that I would love to be and made that journey that way. I also find it quite amusing. I have a quiz for people to see which character in the book they are. And I'll always either get Elizabeth or I'll get her stepmother, Olivia. And that made me think that, yes, actually, I do have some of the character traits of Olivia. If I let my worst self go, I would be a lot like the stepmother. So there is definitely something that we always draw from our real life experiences. There's also the whole aspect of having siblings, because I was 5.5 when my sister was born. So I can remember a time from before that. And so I work that experience into the story through one of the other characters who doesn't have siblings, to kind of show that, well, it's actually really nice to have siblings, even if they can sometimes do really nasty things and be mean. Another aspect that heavily influenced this particular story is the landscape. Because the Grimm fairy tale is from Germany, and my dad is German, we used to go on vacation to visit my grandmother in the Alps. And so that landscape of the mountains and the fields very heavily influenced the setting for this story. Although I didn't want to stick to a fully European feel for it, because I wanted to break away from that fantasy trope of fantasy being very Western. And that's why I also allowed a lot of influences from my travels in Peru. I had a wonderful opportunity to go to Peru. And so there, the mountains and the dresses and the colors kind of found their way into this book as well.
So this is the first time you're writing the book. So why you decided to tell the story in the form of words?
It's what comes most naturally to me. I love reading books. I was definitely one of those bookworms with a nose in her book every possible moment I could at school. Like, during break time, everyone else was playing football. I was sitting there with a book. And they used to make fun of me about it. But it seems to be what I do best. So I might as well just keep going, right?
So do you think you said exactly what you felt?
The book has evolved over time. It was a lot more simplistic when it first started, and it grew with thoughts about all the things that are important to me, because as a German South African growing up in South Africa, I was, of course, also faced with the difficulties of apartheid and the Holocaust in Germany and all of the things that humans do to each other. It's also, I ended up studying psychology for a while, because the idea of good and evil in fantasy is often presented as, well, there are good people and there are bad people, and it's clearly defined. Whereas my upbringing and what I learned about good and evil in psychology shows that it's a lot more nuanced than that, because each one of us has the capacity for good and evil within us. And it's a lot harder to face the world when you know that you could be the one doing what was done at internment camps in Auschwitz, for example. And that's kind of the idea that I wanted to bring through in this story, was that although Elizabeth chooses good and Olivia chooses the path of evil, they both had the capacity for both aspects. And the ending of Becoming, the second part of the siblings' tale, is very much that realization for Elizabeth that she could have gone down a similar path, but she actually chose not to, and that is what makes her different from her stepmother.
So you have influences of German and you have influence of South Africa. So how that country as a land affected or made the story become in that way that you presented?
South Africa added the idea of difference on a grander scale, because I never fit in, so my character also doesn't fit in from that perspective, and then also diversity in other senses. So there are elves who are people in the story, and how they are and the relationships between humans and elves was very heavily drawn on from my experiences in South Africa and the racial tensions that exist. South Africa as a country influenced one of my other books more, this one, The Apprentice Storyteller, which is about a young boy who's 13, who meets up with a storyteller and actually becomes her apprentice, even though she doesn't want to have an apprentice. She's a grumpy 50-something-year-old who doesn't want to take care of an extra person. And here, all the landscapes, there are meerkats in the book, lots of things from South Africa found their way into the story.
So how many books you published till now?
Goodness, I have 5 novels. Let me just see, 5 novellas. And this summer I'll be publishing a short story in my 5th anthology. So yeah, lots of books, 15 books so far, and more coming.
So one is different from other.
Sorry, what was that?
One is different from other. The novels that you published, one is different from other, and the 15 which are going to come are different from each other.
Oh, okay. I have the fairy tales, which are in a series called Elizabeth and Edvard's World, and then I have the Apprentice Storyteller, which the sequel will be releasing this December, called Finding the Way. They are part of the Wishmaster series, and then because this is a story about storytellers, there's a spin-off that are the actual tales that they tell, called The Word Mage's Tales. That spin-off is only available in ebook at the moment, but I'm working on putting them together into 3 volumes of paperback. And then the anthologies, most of the anthologies I've worked on are for charity. So the one that's coming out later this year is called Enchanted Forests. It's a collection of 10 fantasy stories by 10 different authors about magical forests and the creatures living in them. And we're donating all of the proceeds from that book to Rainforest Foundation to support their work in rainforest conservation. And last year we published a book called Enchanted Waters, which is the same concept for ocean conservation.
So where these imagination is coming from?
Oh wow, from everywhere. Like it's kind of funny because someone can say something that will spark an idea, or I'll see something that will give me an idea for a story. I'll read a book and have this what if thought of what if this particular trope was done differently. I also have very vivid dreams. The word Mage's Tales, each one of them is actually based on a dream I've had. So it's very different. I suppose that's the thing about being a storyteller, is that when you see the world and the things that you see and experience, you let them fuel your stories.
So you take time to for the next one. Like you said, the next one is coming
In December.
in
Yes,
December.
I've actually planned out my publishing schedule for the next 3 years. So I'm already know what I'm going to be working on and publishing up until the end of 2024, and there's already one or two coming now for 2025. So yeah, it's also the thing that because I'm not doing this full time, I do have to plan my time very far in advance, because what I'm writing now will be ready sort of for 2023, 2024.
So how many words that you used in the books that you have said now?
Uh, Aspiring is 46,000 words, and Becoming is a little bit longer. I think it was about 50,000. The Apprentice Storyteller is 67 or 68,000 words long. And the Word Mage's Tales that I've been publishing as novellas, they are all between 20 and 30,000 words. Although the one I'm publishing next week, called The Destitute Countess, actually got a little bit longer and is 41,000 words.
So how can you tell different stories?
I generally come up with a plot idea first, so an idea for an adventure of some sort, and then the characters kind of settle into my mind. I think the best way to explain it is I get to know the character and I kind of know where their story is going to take me, but I sort of really immerse myself into the idea of what are the characteristics, what is it this character wants to achieve, and what are the obstacles in their way to achieving that dream. And from there, it kind of is more a matter of, well, following the character's train of thought and what they would do and how they would do it to reach the outcome.
So you are able to create impact uh, in the very first book that you published. So what do you think that worked for you?
It was definitely a very big deal. I think I made the mistake of not actually understanding how to use it for marketing early on. So I wasn't able to really use it as a springboard to gather more interest. I've learned a lot since then about how to market my books. So that's I think I would do things a little bit differently now if I had the chance to redo it. But we'll have to see if any of my other books get an award and see what happens.
So your psychology background. So
Yeah.
how it helped you in presenting your imagination?
It's very helpful in terms of being able to understand the thought processes going on in a character. Um, One of the anthologies that I've contributed to is about a magical school, and each of the authors has written a character from a different species background. So I've written a story about the pixies, and my pixie character, I wanted her to be quite different because it was I suppose it's something that's very, very personal in this case. That one of the causes that's very important to me is this situation of neuroatypical people, is the diversity of expression of the human brain and how the human brain functions, because we have this idea that normal is a certain kind of way, and people who don't think in that way are abnormal. And I would like to break away from that idea to show that it's a different kind of normal. It's just different. It doesn't make them abnormal in any way. And there, the psychology definitely helped, because autism and the traits of people on the autism spectrum allowed me to really make this character as good as I could, and as believable as possible. And I've actually had people who are either on the autism spectrum themselves or have children on the autism spectrum who've come back to me and thanked me because I really got her behaviors right, and the thinking is well presented so that outsiders can begin to understand what's going on inside the mind of someone who thinks differently.
So, how much time it takes for a reader to involve in your imagination, reading your words?
Well, my shortest book, I suppose my shortest story will take them about 20 minutes. But my novella, which is called The Companion's Tale, is about 80 pages. So it'll take you just short of an hour to read, if you read fast. Otherwise, it might be a little bit longer than that, an hour and a half or so. And of course, the other books are longer. So the Apprentice Storyteller would be a couple of hours of reading. I don't have any massive door stoppers yet, so people can enjoy my books for a few hours. They don't need to invest a week or two of their time to get through one of my books. You can read a book in a weekend, kind of thing. But what I like about how I've structured it is it doesn't matter where you start, but the more of my books you read, the bigger picture you get of the universe I've built, because they are actually all interconnected. So one of the main characters from The Apprentice Storyteller, Viola, later on in her life, she becomes an archivist, and she actually finds the manuscript that is the sibling's tale. And, in her time, she then republishes it and brings it out to common knowledge. And then there are also the stories that she and her apprentice tell. So those stories are also interconnected. And there are other stories that are coming. So it doesn't matter where you start reading, but the more you read, the bigger the tapestry becomes in terms of the wider message and the picture of the cultures and the histories that I've built.
You're the storyteller. You're telling the story of the storyteller who is narrating the story. So, are you telling your own? Uh, are you telling about your own self as a storyteller and the storyteller?
Well, this one has a funny story behind it. I chose the name Viola Ilarion as an alter ego for myself, because so her initials are VA and my initials before I got married are AV, and my surname is Bird, and Ilarion is a French name for a type of bird. So I kind of really made her into my alter ego. She's the famous storyteller who everybody knows about. I'm just me, pottering along here on the sidelines, trying to get my books out to the world. So there is that juxtaposition of our characters, and it is fun to play with those things.
So pulling different kind of imagination of yours, and you're taking time for it, and you also putting the continuation after some time. So how you are able to plan this for next 3 years? You know what exactly that comes next.
It's more a matter of I've had these stories in my mind for so long that it's just a matter of finally getting them into a book format. I write quite fast. I know that I do. Even though I don't get as much time to write as I'd like, when I actually sit down to write, I'll make a lot of progress in a short time. So that's quite helpful for me in terms of being able to get the ideas that have been in my head for a long time just out. I also talk a lot about the books I'm working on, so which helps to kind of set up the idea and the themes that I'm going to be talking about in a way that makes the writing process easier when I actually sit down to write. What else? I suppose it's me. It just comes naturally. The words come naturally to me. It's quite easy to do.
So your readers, where are they from?
Everywhere. I have a lot of readers in the United States and in the United Kingdom, but lately there have been quite a few bloggers from India who've joined my review team particularly, and I have reviewers all over Europe as well. I just saw recently that my third most place of sales is Australia, which was kind of fun.
You have connection with Germany and South Africa, and you are able to connect with UK, US, and Australia, India. So,
Yeah.
what is that common thing that is there in you is making reach different lands in the world?
I think it's the fact that I deliberately write what's important to me as a multicultural person, which resonates for people all over the world, instead of following I suppose you can call it a recipe of the marketing strategy and the idea of writing to market. Well, I don't want to exclude people, and to me, it's very important that the books I write reflect what I'd like to see in the world and also comment on the things I dislike that happen in the world. So there are, for example, cases of genocide that I talk about in my books to point out, well, how do these things happen? Why do we reach that point as human beings? And then, of course, there's also the transformation aspect, because I write what I call transformation fiction, where I'm looking at our human capacity to transform our lives, to achieve anything we set our minds to, and to overcome any obstacles in our way. And that, of course, that is true for everyone. We all face different kinds of struggles, and knowing how to overcome those difficulties is helpful, whether you read it as a self-help book or as a fictionalized idea of what that could look like. So, for example, my book that's coming out this week is The Destitute Countess. It's about a young woman whose father has just died, and he made her his heir, which should be really great news. It should be wonderful. But unfortunately, he'd run into serious debts that she didn't know about. So she's actually inherited the obligation to pay his debts. And where is she going to find 3 million, the equivalent of 3 million pounds, in 2 weeks? That's a lot of us face financial trouble and financial difficulty. And the idea that we can do our best, we can focus on what our hearts want, and we can let that fear go. And then the good things will start coming to us. It's a very hard idea to accept because we've all been trained to, save and scrimp and think about that. And no, we can't donate right now because we don't have the money to do it. Even though we really want to help out somebody else, we can't give them the money because we don't have it, even though technically we do have that 100 or whatever, 50. And this is the idea of the Destitute Countess is, well, it's okay to open up. We can allow the good things to come to us as long as we also give our best. And that is sort of the idea behind the transformation aspect, is to show how opening up on different levels can actually help us improve our lives, and in doing so have that ripple effect and improve other people's lives beyond that. And I think that's something that resonates for anyone. It doesn't matter where they come from.
I can observe your vocal expression is very clear. So why you choose this this communicating medium to express your imagination called writing?
My best friend in school was an artist. And so I let the art be her thing and the words be my thing. I wouldn't say I'm good at it, but I'm not bad at drawing, for example. And I did dabble a little bit in acting. But the thing that makes me light up and that really makes me happy is the writing. It's the thing that makes me who I am. And so I cannot change that. And I'm best off embracing it, because I have actually tried. There was a time in my life where I said, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to write for me, and that's it. I'm not actually going to aspire towards anything more than that. And I actually got quite depressed because in the end, I didn't really write that much. And now that I've actually accepted that, well, this is who I am, this is what makes me happy, and I do it more, I'm actually a really happy person. And it's the ball is rolling, and I'm getting better. I was in a very bad place a few years back, so it's good.
You said you have a lot of stories that you want to say. So your background or your life experiences before uh, made you to write in this time of your life?
As I've mentioned, I've been writing since I was 12. So the writing essentially is something that's always been there. And I've done other things on the side. So I did psychology and social anthropology. I I've done the certification to be a transformational life coach. I've worked as an administrator. So I'm a mom. I have two children. I'm a wife. So there's many aspects to who I am, but the one constant that's almost been there for the entire time of my life has been the love of writing and the love of reading. Yeah, I think that's it.
So you have different shades in you. Like you said, you studied different subjects and you are taking different responsibilities. So and now you're connecting to different countries and people who are in different places. So what is that common thing? Even if you're different, even if you have different imaginations and thoughts, experiences, how that common thing is making you to connect with completely different people for reading it.
I think that's the beauty of stories, is like it gives us this possibility of putting ourselves in the place of another, in the eyes and the shoes of another, and we can see the world through their eyes and think back to ourselves, well, what does this mean for me? When That's very powerful, because it means that we have the experiences and our brains absorb the experiences as if we lived it ourselves and learn from it and process the information in a way that can help us in the future. So I have a reviewer who didn't like my book called Naia's Wish. It's a retelling of The Nixie of the Mill Pond. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy with me right now, but I wanted to look at a broader set of experiences. And in the end, it's actually become a woman's fiction that's met fantasy. So it's a fantasy story, but underlying that, it's women's fiction. And there's the Naiad, who is the character who in my story, she makes a mistake. Okay? She thinks she's doing what's best, and she really does what she does out of a desire to do good, but she kind of misinterpreted the situation. So the original fairy tale is about the miller who's having financial trouble, who has this unexpected meeting with the Naiad in his pond, in the mill pond. And she offers to solve his financial problems with magic, but then in exchange she needs the creature, the baby, whose cry he will hear when he steps into his home. And in the fairy tale, he thinks, oh, well, maybe the cat has had her litter, or maybe the sheep just had a baby, just had a lamb. I'll go and check. And then it turns out that no, his wife just had their baby, and that he needs to give up his child to the Naiad. And so I wanted to look at that, because why would a Naiad want a baby? And what would the mother say? Because obviously the fairy tale doesn't take a look at all at what the mother says about this situation where her husband has given up her child for money. So those aspects I found a lot of fun to work into the book, and I found it quite amusing because this reviewer who didn't like the book was upset about the Naiad, because the Naiad's interest in having a child is something very alien to this reader. And then we continue from the mother's perspective, and Hilda is very bitter and angry at her husband because he's made this mistake of giving up her child, and she does everything she can to keep her boy safe. And I've added the element because this is something I think many of us forget, because we live in a time where child mortality is so low, and our children survive. So I looked back into the past at a time where that wasn't the case, and I allowed Hilda's character to actually have had children previously, but they died in a plague situation. So I think I drew on diphtheria, which was one of the common killers of young children in the past, and is something that we actually have vaccines for, which is amazing. And so I gave Hilda this past that makes her really angry at her husband because of him risking her beloved child's life and having this bargain with the magical creature. And then, as with the original fairy tale, the boy actually lives into adulthood, and his mom manages to keep him safe. And then he gets married, and he's an adult, and then the bargain comes into effect, and he gets taken, and then his wife has to go and try and save him. And so with these three characters, I found it very interesting, because that reviewer who rejected the Naiad and the mother's parts of the story, and I said, well, yes, this is the thing, is feminism has done many good things, but it has also changed how we think about being a woman and what's right to want as a woman and what's less right or not right at all. And many young women are being told that the desire to have children is actually something imposed on us by the patriarchy. And I wanted to explore that a little bit, because I don't think that's true. And there are those of us who would love to have children, and there are those of us who don't want to have children, and both options are fine. It's just a part of who we are. It's part of our human expression and the the life of women. And some women want to work and other women want to stay home and take care of their children. Not because someone made them do it, but because they actually enjoy being with their children. And so this is kind of this exploration that Naia's Wish goes into, of the state of women, and looking at where we are now, where we've come from, and how we think about things so that we can maybe form more informed decisions for our own lives.
Uh, so you said you are into books from long time. So you also read books of other authors. Now you became an author. You are expressing your imagination now. So after you becoming a writer, so seeing your own narration, putting it in a form, putting in a format, and sending properly to the world. So, what, what is that unique thing that you observed in yourself that you didn't observe in other authors?
I like the idea of combining the old and the new. So my stories often have a very historical feel to them. And I like looking for the older words that English has lost in the last century because we just don't use them anymore. Because there is such a richness to the language and such diversity because of all the different peoples who actually use English. So it's a lot of fun to work with the words and the language itself, and to kind of construct a feel through which words I use, but also make it accessible to modern readers. So you can't have many hard words or many words that just aren't used anymore. And so I have to kind of find that in between the really old words and the newer words and find something that works. One of my beta readers had a really funny one. She pointed out a word that she thought was modern, and because it's used a lot in social media terms these days. And I could actually go and show her that no, actually, this word has been around for 2 centuries. It's just changed what it means exactly over time, which was fun.
So, what age group people are connecting with your books?
I have quite a range of readers. I was lucky that Naia's Wish was originally published in a limited edition box set with many other authors' work, and that one was particularly targeted to young adult readers. So although my story itself is applicable to a much broader range of readership, it has given me exposure amongst the young adult readers, which was very nice. I think my target in terms of age is at that in-between stage between, leaving the last of childhood behind and actually embracing adulthood. So 18, 19 is the common age for most of my characters. And it's a fun time to write about because it's really at that point where we learn the most about ourselves, because we break free from our family. That's what tends to be when we leave home. It tends to be the time where big life events kind of happen to us in a way, but it's also not so young that older people can't relate to it. And that's also the thing, is that I don't want my characters, well, I just write my characters as they are. They just come. And it seems to be that that's kind of they're talking about adulthood, but they're still relatable to the younger readers as well, because it's talking about issues that influence their lives just as much as it's talking about issues that influence the lives of any adult out there.
So, uh, I'll put your web links in the description of this video, your books and
Okay.
your media links. People who finds our video on YouTube can see the links and can read your books.
Thank you very much.
So, can you tell to my podcast audience where they can find your book and the names of your books and how they can connect with you?
Right. Well, the fairy tale retellings, which I've mentioned, so there's Aspiring and Becoming, which are a single story, and then I also have Gisela's Passion and Naia's Wish. They are available internationally through a whole range of different places. So you can get them on Amazon, you can get them on iBooks, Barnes and Nobles, and a whole range of others. It's best to just go to my website and click on them because they're there. The Apprentice Storyteller is exclusive to Amazon at the moment, so it's available on Kindle Unlimited, and that will be the same for Finding the Way when that one publishes. And then the Word Mage's tales are a little bit all over the place. Some of them are wide and others are not. The anthologies, I think three of the anthologies are wide, so they're available in pretty much any online bookstore that you can find, while Enchanted Waters and Enchanted Forests are exclusive to Amazon. Yeah, and then I have a website which you'll have the link to, so that's one way to find out more about the charity work that I do and all the books that I've written and what I stand for. I also have a blog there about the stories that I've written and the ideas underlying the stories. I have a YouTube channel where I talk a little bit about fairy tales and my books. And I'm most active on social media on Instagram, which is also where we met. So if people would like to see what I'm working on, want to know what I'm reading, what I'm writing, what the themes are in my writing and all of that, that all is the content on my Instagram pages.
So, can you spell your website?
My website is www.Elizabeth, that's ELISABETH, Elizabeth with an S, and Edvard, EDVARD.com.
Because people in podcast they hear you, that's why I said.
Yes, absolutely.
So, so at last, what do you say about my questioning in this conversation?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question. What was that?
What do you say about my questioning in this conversation?
Oh, they were very interesting questions. It's been a lot of fun to answer you, and you've asked some very different ones, the things that most people don't ask. So that was a lot of fun to actually be able to really get into some of the deeper themes of my writing, and that was a lot of fun. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And as an author, as a writer, as a novelist, what do you say about my videos on YouTube? What is your observation? Have you seen any videos?
I haven't actually had a chance to look at them, but from what I can see of what you do, I think you create very valuable content, and that's great. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, I did more than 460 plus interviews of people for into different parts of the world and for into different professions. I'm actually a software engineer. I did masters in software engineering and bachelor's in computer science and engineering. So people who are into different professions like you who are doing great things, I want to tell to the world through my podcast and through my YouTube channel.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I also put this video and audio clip on my website, podcast website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yes, that will be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Astrid. Keep doing,
And
keep
please share with
expressing.
me when you
Yes,
do. Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a
sure.
great day.
Bye.
Bye.